Welcome to the Global Sustainability Leaders Program hosted by the U.S. Green Chamber of Commerce, International Sustainable Chamber of Commerce, and Climate Counts. My name is Michelle Thatcher, and I will be your host for today's program as we dive deeper and go beyond the basics of sustainability to chat more about the regenerative economy with Rudi Daelmans, who is from the Netherlands. Daelmans has been a sustainability director for Desso since 2007. As part of the Tarkett group, Desso is a leading brand for sustainable and innovative carpet floors. Today, Daelmans fills the role of Group Sustainability Scouting and Advocacy Director, where, in a global context, he is supporting the divisions of Tarkett globally on implementing Cradle to Cradle, circular economy, and natural capital. As an experienced advocate and pioneer in the implementation of Cradle to Cradle concept, Daelmans is part of an expert team at the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute and active in several international project groups on the subject of circular economy. This includes Project Mainstream, a collaboration between EMF and WEF, and the CE100. Towards biodiversity, Daelmans is chairing the Red Plus Business Initiative, RBI, where companies purchase voluntary VCS and CCB credits, avoiding deforestation and supporting better livelihoods of indigenous peoples in the Amazon. So welcome to our program, Rudi. It is such an honor to have you with us today. And it's just, thank you for joining us. And we'll just start right in on your program and we'll dive right in to learn more about the regenerative economy.
Thank you, Michelle. It is an honor to me actually being in your webinar and to talk about it because, as you mentioned, I have a pretty long discussions with a lot of people. So, and looking at sustainability, people sometimes ask, okay, but what are we talking about?
Yeah.
And in the last decade, it became clear to me that sustainability is not necessarily only about the tree huggers, but if you want to create and implement sustainability in businesses, it is basically sustaining the business. Without a true sustainable business, you won't be last very long. It is the survival of the fittest and creating a profitable business for the future. So sustainability is definitely something that is a business building opportunity. And as an expert or as a person that is put in the role of sustainability manager or sustainability director or whatever, and asked for a strategy or to implement things or to come up with ideas, I think people should think around what they would like to do themselves. What is important to the person? Because as a person, you are one amongst many. Businesses can consist out of people and persons and what their needs are in the weekends. So basically, what is it that you want to do and want to be in 30 years? What would you as a person would like to contribute? What is your legacy? Do you want to be a part of the problem or do you want to be a part of the solution? So it's humans, by humans, business are built for humans and not for machines. It's about what we're feeling on responsibility on our part and our actions.
And I know at the Chamber, that's something that we reiterate all the time. It is humans, individuals who are leading the charge. So, and we know that on a personal level, people do care. So if you build upon that collective, that is what is making your business and what will make it more sustainable. So thank you for bringing that up. I don't hear that very often.
Well, I think it's not only a nice word, but but it is crucial for implementing. Usually if you're talking about sustainability and you're talking about it's good for the business, people tend to already do a lot for the business, but finally they can also act for themselves to create a better future for themselves and their offsprings.
Yes.
Because if you look at it, sustainability is not about the company or about the product. Sustainability is about creating a new system. It's about thinking in the future. How are we going to manifest ourselves as humanity in the near future? How are we going to live next to each other with 9 billion people on this planet? And and more you see the early efficiency thinking, material efficiency, energy efficiency morph into more interconnected topics, and that basically show you that we're talking about the system, and more terminology pops up. So like in this screen, we're talking about cradle to cradle, which is looking more holistic around sustainability, circular economy, natural capital, biodiversity, which actually is a part of natural capital. We're talking about climate change. If you realize what is climate change and what is it influencing, you will realize we're talking about the system. The UN Sustainable Development Goals, it's not like, okay, let's use less energy, but it is much more than that. The last two, system thinking and regenerative economy, are the basics or the underlying movement around all of these things. It is system thinking we need to do to realize that one action here has an influence on others somewhere else. So if you dive a little bit deeper into the different topics, you will see the things that are the same or point in the same direction, but above all are basically describing the system. How is it that we want to move forward? So if you look at cradle to cradle, there are only 3 design principles. And by now I surely hope that everybody knows them. Waste equals food, use current solar income, and celebrate diversity. From those 3 principles, you will find a lot of answers, if not all the answers on all the questions you have. And on those design principles, the standard of the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute is built. But you can imagine that building a standard that you need to quantify is much more difficult than living according to the design principles that everybody can understand. And if you're really interested in creating a better world, you will push things forward according to those design principles. You might see cradle to cradle as mainly product related, because waste equals food and use current solar are typically things that are around products. But in order to have a product that follows these principles, you have to have a system in place. You cannot use recycled input if you do not have a system that takes material from the market and turns it into a raw material you can use. And most important is that, and this is something you will hear more often, cradle to cradle is not about doing less bad, but it is being beneficial. So how can my actions be beneficial to the environment, to the humans, to the supply chain, to everything I do? And believe me, this is a very, very difficult task, but the more thinking around it delivers interesting innovations, as we learned at Tarkett. The next thing that is basically much alike is the cradle to cradle well, you could say follow-up is the circular economy. The circular economy is based on 3 principles that are close to cradle, because it's about design out waste and pollution. And if you design out waste and pollution, you basically say that your waste is food. Where do you want to go with it elsewhere? But you need to, and this is the addition to more explicit form, you need to design your product and your system to not have the waste and the pollution. So it's not about efficiency, it's about thinking at the design stage on how can I make a product in a world where we can prevent having the waste and the pollution. It's keeping products and materials in use. So it is, some people think it's about closing loops. But personally, I feel we're talking about metabolisms. Why would I produce a product, ship it to the end of the world? The people there use it, then they ship it back to me, and I produce a new product for them. It would be better if they would be able to harvest the materials that are in that specific product and produce a new product that they can ship to me. That makes much more sense. And to be honest, I don't want to be ending up in more traffic jams than we already have.
I agree.
And it is the other thing is that is like cradle to cradle being beneficial. It's about regenerate natural systems. And interesting part of the natural systems, and we can come back to that a bit later with natural capital, is that nature provides basically everything we need. There is nothing on this globe that does not have its origin from nature. So if what we're currently doing is living on the stock of nature, and the stock is reducing. And so our fossil fuels are diminishing. Our certain minerals are becoming more and more scarce. So we are taking more than the planet can deliver. So we have to regenerate natural systems in order to keep flourishing our business forever. A business cannot just take more and more without thinking about, okay, if we want to be the same business or even a bigger business in the future, where the hell are we going to take our materials from?
And can we also expand that into the social realm as well? When we talk about the regenerative economy, I think of the triple bottom line within that concept as well. Is that something that you guys talk about? Is that something that you implement within the regenerative economy scope?
Well, for sure. Let me put it that way. It is, if you look at circular economy, it is basically specifically on the economy. And if you look at cradle to cradle, it is about, if you go back one slide, it's about celebrating diversity. And that also takes into account human diversity. Because humans from different social backgrounds, humans from different countries, from different races, they all have their own fantastic ideas, and they can contribute to the world we need to create. If you look at Chinese people, they are already looking at a different way to nature and to the products they use than usually people from Western world. And so we can learn from each other, and we should actually celebrate everyone that is joining the so-called the party. So yes, we are looking into that, but different, because we're talking about the different terminologies. The different terminologies have obviously different focal points. And if we're going to look at, you were referring to Tarkett also, is we are looking into waste equals food and do not, or design out pollution. We are determined to look into our purchase and assess the toxicity of our materials we purchase, and where possible optimize it. And I can tell you that it is extremely difficult in some cases to convince suppliers that they have to take out certain chemicals, because first of all, they're not forbidden, they're not on any red list or green list or whatever. Mm-hmm. So why would you want to get them out? Well, just because we feel they're, according to the cradle-to-cradle design principles and the cradle-to-cradle material health assessment, it's just not the right material in this specific use. So please get it out. And then obviously, even Tarkett is not big enough to change the world. So in certain cases, we will still have minor quantities of materials we prefer not to have, but we are sure we already have much better materials than anybody else, because we do not want to perpetually cycle toxic material, because that doesn't make sense. Why would you? And this is something I'm sometimes a bit bothered with, because everybody is asking for recycled materials and tell me that my competitor has better materials than I, or higher recycled content. And I said, I can do the same. Just give me your toxic waste and I put it in the material and I give it back. And then all of a sudden they say, oh, I don't want that. So they are not realizing what they're actually doing. So both cradle to cradle and the circular economy helps the thinking within Tarkett to avoid the toxins, to improve the products, and to keep the materials into continuous cycles. And an interesting realm which is currently more and more discussed is natural capital. And within the natural capital, it's basically the world of living and non-living things. And the world of living things is usually called the biodiversity. And biodiversity is, a zoo has also a biodiversity, but it's not an ecosystem. An ecosystem is a system of living things, even with non-living things, minerals and nutrients, that create a system that delivers ecosystem services, like the rainforest create a climate regulation. So because of the way they are producing oxygen and taking in CO2, storing CO2, and et cetera, they are actually regulating the climate. So if we chop down the Amazon, well, we have a problem. Sorry. So the natural capital is crucial to us because, as I've before already mentioned, it delivers us a lot of things. The raw materials, its fuels, pure air, etc., etc. And if you realize that if we're not taking care of this natural capital, well, we are in we will have a problem, because if you look at the effects, one of the things everybody is aware of Earth Overshoot Day. Only little people are aware that Earth Overshoot Day is caused by the biodiversity loss. So although a lot of people call other people that care about biodiversity tree huggers, it's not necessarily the biodiversity as such that businesses should take care of, but it is the services they provide. If you look at the pictures, it obviously creates climate change, but also we are destroying our rainforest in a devastating rate, releasing lots of oxygen, lots of CO2, which gives us actually a bigger problem than before. And maybe we don't even realize that. So if we lose the stock of natural capital, it's just impossible to have a circular economy. If we don't have a circular economy, we will not be able to produce our products in the near future, because we run out of materials. So there you see already that we're talking about a completely integrated system and that we are not smart if we just think that businesses are not part of the environment, because we are. And what about climate change? Because what is it actually? And I think I already mentioned it. If we're talking about destruction of the biodiversity, and specifically in the Amazon, other rainforest, we basically reduce the capacity of the Earth to regulate climate. And it's an effect and not a cause. So the fact that we will have, for instance, in North America, you will have more hurricanes. We're here in the Netherlands. We will have to build higher dikes if you want to survive in the near future, and that is because the climate is changing. But it's not because of the climate. It's because we are destroying too much biodiversity, and the CO2 concentration in the air and the overload of land use is the basic, the basic, or the root cause actually of the climate change. And that means that energy efficiency, moving towards renewable energy, is a good thing, while moving to biomass, like I put here, using unlimited biomass is not a good thing, because biomass grows somewhere. In order to grow stuff, you need land. And we all know examples that because the Amazon, the rainforest didn't have a value, we just chopped down the Amazon for the wood because that has a value. Oh, that's great, because in the chopped down area we can plant soy, and we can sell the soy because it has a greater monetary value than the initial Amazon has. And then after 10 years we say, oops, we have a problem, because all of a sudden we have a big storm hitting wherever, and we wonder how did it happen, not realizing that because we did not value the forest, we created this problem. And to make more serious efforts for countries and regions to push sustainability, because usually sustainability is either for a product or an NGO or a company, often regions and countries were forgotten. So the UN came with UN Sustainable Development Goals. They created 17, and each of those goals have specific targets. So in total, we have 169 different targets, and it asks the governments to create policies or help companies or whatever to either to eradicate poverty or to eradicate hunger. And obviously we're talking also about responsible consumption and production, which is more for companies, climate action for everybody. Life below water and life on land is the biodiversity. And here you can already see that we try to make things clear for people, but climate action, as we just saw, is interrelated with life below water and life on land because of the fact that it is related with biodiversity. Clean water and sanitation in 6 is basically also an ecosystem service, because if you have a proper functioning ecosystem, it will clear your water. Many people drink groundwater, and the wrong humans don't know how fast they have to poison the groundwater sometimes. So the UN Development Goals are also guidelines to create a better world, to help companies understand the system where we want to go to. So for other companies, but also for Tarkett, the UN Sustainable Development Goals are a guidance next to obviously our cradle to cradle and circular economy. We are pushing the reduction of greenhouse gases. We are cooperating with a lot of companies and in the CE100 as aforementioned and the World Economic Forum. We are trying to, we strongly believe that we need to protect the Amazon. It's not to buy off our guilt because we are pushing our own or reducing our own greenhouse gases, but on top of that, we're also investing in carbon capture in the Amazon. So one of the things that is currently under the development is to find the balance between the use of fossil fuels, fossil materials, and biomass. Because just think about what would happen if we would change all the fossil use into biomass. So we would use it as a biofuel, we would use it as bioplastics, etc., etc. The question that pops up: how much land do we need that we're currently using for ecosystem services, that we're currently using to build our homes on, that we're currently using to recreate? We want to have a nice walk on the beach or in the forest, or that we need to grow our food. And one thing is often forgotten: a major nutrient component is phosphoric, and the phosphates are actually becoming more and more scarce. We only have for 50 years we have this in place. So we couldn't even have artificial fertilizers because we lack an important part of the nutrient cycle. And so if we grow biomass, we cannot grow food. And this is something we need to think about, unless, of course, we start eating other stuff than nice food that doesn't need the phosphoric to grow. Yes, you have a question, Michelle.
No, I was just, I mean, you're tying it all back together, bringing it back to the system, and even the Sustainable Development Goals. I was really appreciative of the fact that you brought system thinking into that platform, because one always affects the other. And I noticed that even in Tarkett, you're using, several sustainable development goals that you're focused on. So no. And yes, I think some of these concepts are new to our listeners, and it's so refreshing to go over them, one step at a time, and starting to tie them all together. I think that's the key. We look at Cradle to Cradle as, one system, and then we look at Sustainable Development Goals as another system, and then how do all of these start to fit together, and just thinking in terms of the entire system and bringing the different levels together is really important for everyone to start to understand, because you might look at one system and say, should I be doing that? Or should I be doing this? And how can I manage all of those? And how does one affect the other?
You're absolutely right, Michelle. If you, I do understand that it is sometimes sounds a bit complicated, because, oh my God, I need to have everything in my head, which for some people can definitely happen. Therefore, as you mentioned, Tarkett is also using the Sustainable Development Goals, because we basically use certain wordings in a certain context to make people understand better and focus better. But the point is that, and this is obviously what we're trying to achieve, is that those people who are basically running the company without being the CEO, because that's the people that really care for the humans in the business. They create the objectives for the future. Where does this business go to? And they have to understand that it is a system. If they make a mistake, they could create a objective with unintended consequences. And you don't want that. You don't want to create something that is creating an unintended, because people are usually like, okay, so you don't want me to do this? Okay, I will do the other thing, which is equally bad, for instance. So this is where we are not focusing too much on things like don't do this or don't do that, but it is, okay, where do you want to stand and where do you want to go, and follow those guidelines. So we need to think in systems, as you mentioned, and don't try to resolve an effect, but always think, what is the root cause? And if we're looking for solutions, doesn't it create another problem? Aren't we filling one hole with the other? An interesting example is like, okay, if you look, for instance, and for those who are aware of life cycle assessments and environmental product declarations, we will find that biomass has a carbon footprint of 0 per definition. So if you want to have a carbon neutral product, you think, wait a minute, I just kick out all the fossil stuff and I use bio-based input, so I will have a fantastic environmental product declaration. What you're forgetting is it might look good on the marketing brochure, but you are basically supporting devastation in biodiversity. And 5 years later, when your bio-based product is a major success, because marketing is very good at marketing and sales is very good at selling, you all of a sudden realize that the forest you were walking in and enjoying your life in as a kid turned into a cornfield. And this is the kind of thinking we need to have, which is sometimes a bit challenging. Always don't fill one hole with another. And this is where Cradle to Cradle, as well as circular economy, dictate we're destroying too much. And we know about Earth Overshoot Day. So let's not try to make things less bad, but let's try to be as regenerative as possible. I always use an interesting visualization. Let's visualize that society is in a car. And this car is running like 120 miles an hour and straight to a brick wall. And the current methodologies usually say, oh, let's slow down. Let's slow down. What actually happens is we just prolonging the time that we will hit the wall, right? We will hit the wall again with a lower speed, but we will nevertheless hit the wall.
Yeah.
And even if we would start braking, we never know whether it is too late or not. Are we braking fast enough to stop before we hit the wall? And even if we are stopping, how much did we destroy to have a decent life at that point in time? So currently we have several people in that car saying, wait a minute, next to the gas pedal and the brakes, we do have a steering wheel. Let's take 180 degrees turn. Let's not destroy less bad. Let's not slow down fast or less fast, but let's try to just go in the right direction and make things better. And believe me, it gives a lot of energy if you are thinking that way, because you are actually creating a better world and you are actually a part of the solution rather than the problem. And it is possible. It's not always possible, but it is possible. And I think this is what we need to strive for. And everybody working in this realm is basically contributing, as long as the contribution is in line with what the system is asking for. So it's all nice and well, but usually in the business is yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Sustainability Manager, but what's in it for us? Well, the business can only strive if people in and around it strive, but also the environment. As mentioned before, we will lose raw materials. We already see the increase in price of raw materials due to scarcity, price volatilities, because people, for some reason, feel that they need to own land where minerals happen to be. So it's about preserving natural capital. That means preserving ecosystem services. That basically could mean the preservation of your factory or your plant in a certain area. That could mean that you basically do not have a drought area in an area where you are growing your crops for whatever material you need to have it. And I think often forgotten, and you mentioned it before, the social part of it. If we treat everybody as humans and everybody equal, and everybody is feeling that they move in the proper direction, that the business is working for them, not only you working for the business, you create loyal, enthusiastic workforce. And guess what? It is a proven fact that is increasing your productivity with 10%. Just imagine if you're a company with 10,000 people, 10% of productivity increase. That is a lot of money. So that's the workforce. The other one is the society. Society is always nagging that you're doing the wrong thing. But pushing all these things, trying to be a part of the solution rather than the problem, that keeps your license to operate. Even if you are making mistakes, but you are openly communicating that, okay, we might have done this wrong, but we're going to do this and blah, 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 just to get where we all want. And also, if you are addressing the SDGs, and I mentioned here rainbow washing because we all know greenwashing, but the new terminology today is greenwashing or rainbow washing, because as you saw, the SDGs are many colors. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we have a lot of companies currently saying, oh, we address all the SDGs without having a true impact. And again, it's not easy, but communicating and selling a story is so much easier than actually work on it. And so let's please keep that in mind.
I hadn't heard that term rainbow washing, so thank you for
it's new. Yeah. And if you have this commitment of your workforce, if you have a commitment as a business to regenerate, it will help building the brand. And that is the basic return on investment of a business. That's the business rationale. It creates innovation. And every CFO, every CEO knows that innovation is detrimental for success. And creating a regenerative business needs innovation. You need to think out of the box. You cannot walk the pathways you walked before. So that is a crucial element into the whole. Oh, and by the way, it's also, the values obviously are also for everybody in that. It's fresh air, sustainable products, recreation, satisfaction in work. So again, it's about humans in the business for the business. And I think to neglect this, to set this aside, does not make sense if you really want to survive in the near future. So it's also about value chain cooperation, which is a very challenging one actually. And no single company, how big it is, can do it alone. We have to do it together. We have to do the right thing, to do the good together. If we don't do that, we will still be single companies trying to, lure each other into a lower price or a whatever. And we're not going to get anywhere. So if you want to have an incremental change, you can actually compete. But if you really want to make a change, if you really want to make step, you have to cooperate. And we live together in this world as in there is no other one. It's not that we can say, okay, let's move to the next one because it's done here. So our business case is the business case of the actors in the value chain. If they are successful, we are successful. Because we basically strive for the same thing. We all want to have a decent living, and we all want to have we all want to be able to use the money we made to recreate and to make a nice life. We have to work in order to live, and not to live in order to work, because that doesn't make sense. And the UN SDGs help to communicate and find common objectives. So it is also a linguistic thing. We are pushing more or less the same agenda. And this is where also the Partnership for the Goals, SDG 17, is basically introduced. The UN acknowledges the fact that you have to cooperate. And if you know things better than your value chain, help them, educate them, communicate with them. Because they might do stupid things, but they're probably not aware of it. I'm pretty sure that nobody is willingly destroying the world and knowingly doing that. So if there is something wrong, just give that message, just help them create a better product for you as a raw material, or help them understand what you're striving at. So again, it is shared value for the value chain, for people in the company, for the businesses, et cetera, et cetera. And I think what could help for companies is mapping opportunities and a risk analysis in your value chain. What is important? What is less important? And the interesting part of this is that risk analysis is like, okay, it's a bit negative connotation. And it is like, okay, oh, if they don't do this, we will lose a lot of money there. But that is like a negative thing. It's much more fun, and it's much more energizing to look at the opportunities. And to, again, be part of the solution rather than the problem. Create a better system for the future. So, as I mentioned, it's doing good, but let's do it together. And basically that was my message, or is my message, to everybody who wants to hear it. And I hope that a lot of people are going to copy this. Thank you, Michelle, for giving me the chance. And any other questions?
Well, I just want to thank you so much, Rudi, for this inspiring presentation, and really looking, I mean, I can absolutely tell that you do have that optimistic view, and that we all can do good together. And even tying it back into the very beginning of the systems thinking with the optimistic viewpoint of making sure that it's not just doing less bad, but it's that each of us can strive towards being beneficial. And so, so I know that's an inspiration to all of our listeners, and that we can all look at this whole thing called sustainability and now regenerative economy in a completely new way. So I want to thank you again so much for joining us and being part of our summit, and leading by example and sharing your words of wisdom, so that each of us, all of us, can take sustainability to that next level in building a regenerative economy within our country and within our region. So thank you so much, Rudi.
You're more than welcome, Michelle. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my experiences and my, well, I think you should be positive, because if you're not positive, why are you doing it? Then you need to have the conviction that we are able to do it. We are able to pull it off. I mean, Wasn't there a guy somewhere in the US saying someday, some time ago, we're going to the moon, not knowing how the hell we're going to get there?
Yeah.
And what happened? In a decade, we were there. So if we really want things, if we really want it, and we're really cooperating and we understand what needs to be done, what is the job that needs to be done, we will get there. But we need to cooperate. And that, I think, the cooperation is basically the biggest struggle we have, because as businesses, we usually compete and do not cooperate. That is even, in some cases, forbidden by law to cooperate in certain areas.
Well, and it goes back to the SDG 17 on partnerships. And yes. I know with us at the U.S. Green Chamber of Commerce and International Sustainable Chamber of Commerce and Climate Counts, we very much embrace that. We work with other nonprofits, we work with businesses, we work with city and government entities. So thank you for ending on that particular note, because we can all reach that moon together in the field of sustainability. So thank you again for all of the inspiration.
Welcome, and thank you for giving me the chance.